We're going to kick off with the anatomy and physiology of the musculoskeletal system. Now, we talk about the musculoskeletal system as a whole, but for ease of teaching, I'm actually going to divide it into two. So we'll deal with the skeletal system first. And we'll look at the functions. And there are many functions of the skeleton, some of which are blatantly obvious. Others may take you a little bit by surprise. So, first of all, we can consider its function of support. And in particular, it supports the soft tissues. So if I could grip this lady's skull, the cranium, and just suddenly whip it out along with the rest of a skeleton, a bit like the trick with the tablecloth where they snatch the tablecloth and leave the plates and things, she will just become a massive soft tissue. She'll just become a bit of a blob of jelly. Okay? Because this skeleton is inside and it's supporting everything. It's giving structure, it's giving framework. We refer to a skeleton that's inside the body, supporting the soft tissues, as an endoskeleton. So the human skeleton is an endoskeleton. Endo meaning within. Secondly, the skeleton provides a system of levers. And this, of course, facilitates movement and locomotion. And related to point number 2, the skeleton forms joints at various places. And joints, of course, are for articulation mostly. There are some types of joints which are for joining bones together to form a different structure. We'll look at that later when we look at joints in more detail. But on the whole, most joints are for articulation. The skeleton is also for blood cell production. And this comes from the bone marrow. So all of our blood cells originate from the bone marrow, and the bone marrow is found within the centres of most bones. The skeleton is also for protection. And again, this is for protection of soft tissues. So, for example, the cranium. We talked about the cranium last week. Where's the cranium? Yep, well done. It's this dome-shaped region at the top here. The cranium protects the brain, obviously. The rib cage protects the lungs and the heart. The orbit. Does anybody know where the orbit is? Yeah, it's a part of the facial bones that surrounds the eye. It's the socket that the eyes fit into. Think about it. If somebody's going to hit you in the face and they're going to try and give you a black eye, the majority of their fist is going to hit the brow ridge and this part here. And these are the two areas of the orbit with the eye recessed slightly within it. So the soft, delicate tissue of the eye would be protected or partially protected from such a blow. The pubis. Anybody know where the pubis bone is? Down here somewhere. Okay, the pubis is actually part of the pelvic girdle, and it's at the front here, literally just underneath where your pubic hair is. And that's protecting the bladder. You may think, well, okay, it's protecting the bladder, but why? It's not as if the bladder is as important as your brain or your lungs or your heart or whatever. But your bladder is very important, primarily because it's a storage tank for a toxic substance. And that toxic substance is urea, which is in urine. And if the bladder gets disrupted in some way or torn or ruptured, then what happens is you leak urine into the pelvic and abdominal cavities, and that will poison those vital organs that we find within those cavities. So it is pretty important that it gets protected. Now, if we think about the skeleton as a whole, we can divide it into two regions. The first of these is the axial skeleton, and then secondly, the appendicular skeleton. And we need to think about the component parts of each of these. So I'm going to take the axial skeleton first, and we'll look at that in quite a bit of detail. Now, within the axial skeleton, we have the skull, the vertebral column, the rib cage, and the sternum. Think about where all these things lie. So we've got the skull, the vertebral column, which is the backbone, the rib cage, and the sternum, which is the breastbone at the front. So all of those bones lie centrally to the body. They're part of the central axis of the body, hence its name, the axial skeleton. So they're the line of bones that run through the central axis of the body. So let's look at the skull first of all.